Okay, so this is the third Streamlit tutorial, and in this one we're going to explore how to apply layouts to our Streamlit application. So this is where we finished in the second lesson. One thing I discovered whilst in between playing around and looking at some of the layouts was, where was it? A status elements. Okay, which you've got like your progress bars and your spinners that you'll be used to seeing when things are loading on the application. But then I noticed these two, balloons and snow. So what I did is when I click the hello button, I applied that element to the application as well. And you'll see it gives a nice little animation. So a good one for like a little celebration one. And I'll let you play and find out what the snow one looks like. Okay, so our main thing today though is we're looking at layouts. So I'm going to go to the documentation, bring up the layouts, and the first one we're going to explore is the sidebar. So just as usual, I'm going to scroll down and have a look at the examples. But just to note, there are two ways that we can create layouts. One is this one called object notation. Now this requires us to do a standard kind of like we've done before, the Streamlit followed by the layout type. And then after that, you put dot and then the element or widget you wish to add to that sidebar. Okay, you can only have one sidebar in your app, so we don't need a reference to this. We can just keep on adding to it. Or this is another way of doing it, which I think is a little bit nicer. We can say with the sidebar, then anything that's indented within there, all of those elements will be added into the sidebar on the left. So if we take this bit of code here, on here, now I'm going to take one bit out because I don't want to explain really what echo does at the moment. So we're going to ignore that and just have the right command here. And we've got a couple of new elements there that we'll look at in a second. So let's go and have a look at what's happened. Nice, so we've got this sidebar. We've got a spinning loading icon here. And then it's changed to a nice green box saying that it was finished loading or done. Okay, so that was the sidebar that we created. We put this text in. This code will be printed to the sidebar, which we can see here at the top. And then with a spinner, which will show a loading, we get it to wait for 5 seconds whilst it's loading. And then we have another new element here called success, which was the green box that you saw that came up afterwards. So now if I wanted to add anything else, I could, for example, use the object notation. So I could say sidebar dot title. So if I wanted to add any new elements into it, I can use this as well. If I rerun, it will have to wait till that's finished. Okay, and there you go. That came up afterwards. So we had that pause of 5 seconds there. If I wanted that to go at the top, I could take that out, put that here, and then I don't have to reference the sidebar because now it's within that indented code. So I can remove that bit. Okay, rerun, and then we get the title at the top. So you can see we can close down that sidebar and it's got all the animation already built in for us. So we could have, for example, a menu of or different options for our application could all go in here. You could have a login system on here as well if you wanted. Okay, so let's look at a second one here. We're going to look at columns now. We scroll down to see what it looks like. So this allows us to put columns on our application. And it works in very much the same way. So we've got our standard Streamlit imported at the top. We've got the columns being created. This is how many columns we want. And these are the names of the columns that it will create for us. So then we can refer to them later on to add in new elements. So you can see here with column 1, we've added a header and an image. Column 2, a header and an image. Column 3, a header and an image. Okay, and it applies exactly the same way. You can use the object notation as well for this if you wanted to. Just to give an example, here it is down here. So in this one, we've got a column 1 with 3 and 1 So we've got an index that's been passed here, or size possibly. Okay, so this one is given a width of 3, the other one's been given a width of 1. Okay, it's creating some random data then, and this is where it's put into column 1, it's put the subheading and the line chart, and then to column 2, it's put this in the data. Okay, so all this is stating here is the width, and I think if we probably go up to the properties, it would have told me that. Okay, so if it's an integer, it specifies the number of columns to insert, which is the first example we saw. Or creates a column for each number, and each column's width is proportional to the number provided. So here, 3, 1, and 2 would create 3 columns where the first column is 3 times the width of the second, and the last column is 2 times that width. Okay, so the first one's 3 times the size, this one's a basic 1, and this one is 2 times the size of the middle one. Another one that you could be interested in using is the tabs. This will give you a layout as like this, and you can switch between tabs on your application. We have an expander, which can be useful to have if you want to have like a little drop down. So you've got a graph here, for example, you can see an explanation. Containers, I wouldn't imagine we're going to use them many on our application this time, but it would just allow you to have areas where you can kind of empty the information or add new elements to them much easier. So you can add elements in the middle of your page much easier than you could otherwise. And empty is the one that can be quite useful. Basically, if you've got a container that you want to kind of get removed or to make it disappear, you can set the element to empty first, like it has here. So we set an empty placeholder, then they've put text, okay, and then that gets replaced with a line chart. And then inside the placeholder, we have now a container that creates these 2 pieces of text. And then when the empty is called again, it would remove all of those elements. Okay, so it's if you've got a layout where you're going to need to kind of empty or clear everything that's on the screen, you're going to need to explore one of these. Okay, so with some of the examples that you had from the last lesson, have a go at trying to implement 1 or 2 of these layouts and see if you can get the elements laying out much nicer than just stacking on top of each other as we have done before. In the next lesson after this, we're going to start going more into the pillow library and start to begin the main creation of our Photoshop kind of Instagram style application.